Welcome to the afternoon stretch. I am KOIN 6 Chief Meteorologist Josh Cozart in for Kelly Barron and, of course, Todd Unger and our own Travis Tyke, which usually start off our afternoon program. But we have a lot of weather to really kind of break down as we've seen some major changes over about the past 12 hours or so. You'll remember yesterday was bright blue, sunny, and really seasonal as far as those temperatures go, and now seeing a big weather pattern shakeup. So this, of course, is prompting a KOIN 6 weather alert to go into place starting this evening. And that's going to be carrying us through pretty much the middle of this week, all as we prepare for the wildfire smoke to continue to choke out our skies, temperatures to rise, and unfortunately our wildfire concerns also elevated here as we progress through the next several days. So this is going to be something we are keeping an extremely close eye on in the weather department, as it has lasting impacts on so many of us, and any of our outdoor activities may be needed to be rethinked through as we prepare for these potentially dangerous conditions to find their way back into much of the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to go ahead and give you a bit of a satellite view of exactly what is happening above our heads, and really even at the surface level. The winds have directionally changed. Now, over the past several days, we have really kind of held on to that onshore flow, which is where the winds blow from the Pacific inland, and that's been pushing a lot of the wildfire smoke off to the east. So it's been our friends in central and eastern Oregon that have been dealing with the less than ideal air quality. And now it's our turn as those winds directionally change. Still primarily out of the north, but a bit of the upper layers of the atmosphere helping to push it a little more off to the south and to the west. And that's helping to push a lot of the smoke off into our area. You can see by those heat indicators, the red little blips near where the smoke is actually starting. That is a good area of where the fires, some of the largest fires, are currently burning. We have the grasshopper fire that we've been tracking here on KOIN 6 over the past several days, really allowing for a lot of that wildfire smoke to move its way back into our area. So not very surprising that the smoke has made its way, unfortunately, back into western Oregon and southwest Washington. A multitude of fires are burning out towards the Evergreen State in Washington. Oregon just the same, as unfortunately Oregon has now surpassed its record of acreage burned in a single wildfire season. Keep in mind, August, September, still some of the worst months that we see wildfire activity. So we are definitely in the thick of things, and this will likely go down as a record-breaker wildfire year for us, with over 1 million acres burned so far. You can read more about that right now at KOIN.com. We have the breakdown, and exactly if you want to get a better idea of where all of this wildfire smoke is heading in the days to come. And of course, you can see those hazy conditions in the image below me, overlooking downtown Portland on this Monday evening, and really across the board, that's where we are picking up on a lot of the wildfire activity. And unfortunately, our Salem camera has gone out, but even through the central Willamette Valley, feeling the impacts, and even as far south as the Eugene-Springfield area, dealing with the widespread wildfire smoke. That's where we are currently seeing our air quality number at 117. That's at least in a small pocket of downtown Portland. That's putting us in the unhealthy for sensitive groups category. The rest of the I-5 corridor definitely holding on to that moderate air quality at this point in time, but very likely to fall back into that unhealthy category. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means a lot of us here across the West are going to be dealing with this wildfire smoke for the next several days. So not only is it going to be uncomfortable, the smell outside of the wildfire smoke, which you can actually smell at this point in time, but also reducing our visibility here across the valley. Even in parts of the coastline, we are expected to hold on to some of that haze, as the worst of the air quality, the unhealthy category, still resides out towards the northeast corner of our state. And that's going to be something that's just really ongoing for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. So if you are falling under that sensitive group category, those are people maybe with underlying health issues, with asthma, or are just overall sensitive to the smoke, like myself, you definitely want to make sure that you are spending your time inside with the windows and doors shut and sealed. Those air purifiers, that's really going to come into play as well. If you just search on KOIN.com, air purification, we've got a breakdown on there. I've done many interviews with folks across the state of Oregon and helping to really kind of hone in on what the best way of staying and protecting your inside air during conditions like this. So you want to reduce your outdoor activity. So maybe postpone the running outdoors for the next couple of days. Find a treadmill to do that sort of activity inside, because this air quality is definitely something we have not been used to, at least so far this summer season. Years past, of course, we have dealt with even worse, but not likely to see anything like what we saw back in 2020 with those orange skies being completely choked out. But having said that, we are still holding on to the unhealthy air quality really as we push our way through the next couple of days. I'm not anticipating any improvements until we move into maybe, say, Thursday, Friday. Now, the wildfire smoke, it actually could bode well for us. For some of us, as we are not only preparing for the wildfire smoke to stay overhead, but we're also preparing for the high heat to continue to build. So some of this wildfire smoke might actually reflect some of that heat back out into outer space, and that would help to improve our air quality here across the I-5 corridor, or not our air quality, but our temperature forecast as we try to push close to the triple-digit mark. But you can really see that the worst of the air quality likely going to be falling under the Clackamas County area. That's where very unhealthy, if not even hazardous areas of potential. And a lot of that is stemming from that grasshopper fire that has burned thousands upon thousands of acres, and that's all now pushing its way into our area. You might remember if you were looking out towards the Mount Hood area late last week, even over the weekend, you could see some of the billowing smoke as not necessarily the wind was blowing strong enough, which is good because that helps fire crews kind of get the upper hand on a lot of these blazes, but it was really holding on to that vertical building of the cumulus cloud. So thankfully it did not create any of its own lightning, which is also a concern when we are talking about wildfire smoke that could potentially create its own lightning, thus potentially creating more of that thunderstorm-like activity and the fire threat elevated. So really, as we push our way through tomorrow morning, you got to keep in mind the coolest point of the day found in the morning, the cooler temperatures. The colder the air is, it likes to sink. And it has the potential to grab a lot of those particulates of the fire, the haze that we are seeing, and drag it down towards the surface. So likely waking up with some very red sunsets and sunrises tomorrow as we really hold on to that less than ideal air quality. So keep that in mind. Limit your time spent outside. That is the real key takeaway. Unfortunately, as our current wildfires, they are burning across our state. Everywhere that you see the red shaded area is where a burn scar currently resides and likely where a fire is already burning. Over 63 fires scorching much of our area, burning again over 1 million acres. So it's no surprise that wildfire smoke has found its way all the way into Western Oregon as it's been polluting our skies really over the last several days here in the metro area. But we are expecting to see those winds that are quite gusty at this point in time, nearing about 20-mile-per-hour speeds in downtown Portland, into the teens, out into the western sections of town as well. That's where we could potentially see some improvements, not only tonight, but into tomorrow. And it's that northeasterly breeze that, again, kind of creates those downsloping winds for so many of us as well. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind as we move our way through the next several days, that the wind, the improvements, they should be on the horizon. So that would be beneficial for so many of us too, as our future cast wind speeds really kind of taking us through the next 48 hours or so with those easterly winds. That's going to be keeping that wildfire smoke pushing back into the I-5 corridor, the coastline as well. We'll push this through time as we move our way into tomorrow afternoon. Not expected to see the winds as strong, but by Wednesday, we start to get a little bit more of an onshore flow. That's when we should start to see some of the more beneficial impacts as far as the wildfire smoke being reduced here in the valley. Of course, it's got to go somewhere because it's not going to completely mix out of the atmosphere likely going to be pushing its way back into central and eastern Oregon over the next several days. So just keep that in mind. We are not done with the wildfire smoke. It just takes that minor wind directional change to move it right back into western Oregon and southwest Washington. So we are expected to see those improvements as far as the wind speeds go. Now, I mentioned the downsloping winds. We've been experiencing that with that onshore flow where it actually dropped Oregon's, or I should say Portland and the valleys conditions, but it was central and eastern Oregon that was dealing with the downsloping winds. Those are winds that go up in elevation, and as they descend, the descending areas where those wind speeds warm up, they speed up, and they dry things out. Now it's our turn here in the valley, out towards the coast, the foothills of the Cascades here in the western sections of Oregon and Washington. That is what is speeding up our process right now. So we're going to be keeping a really close eye on this. Of course, just to give you perspective, just a reminder, and this is in no way a comparison, but 2020, when we saw those Labor Day fires, it was an east downsloping event. Granted, our landscape conditions aren't similar to 2020 as of right now, although they are approaching that. The winds are not as strong as that, and our temperatures right now are not as hot as that. So in no way is this going to be a repeat of 2020, thankfully. Of course, we need to use extreme caution because that is a very real potential as we move our way deeper into wildfire season. But that's the same type of wind setup. It's also not going to be as persistent as what we saw back in 2020. That's the good news. But nonetheless, these are going to be pushing those temperatures up and also bringing the wildfire smoke back to our area. So tomorrow, from noon on Tuesday to 11 p.m. on Wednesday, that's where we could potentially see our temperatures get up to 95 to maybe even 100 degrees here across the Portland-Vancouver area. The high heat building once again, all as the wildfire smoke is choking our skies. Now, I had mentioned earlier that the wildfire smoke could actually be beneficial in regards to our temperatures climbing. It could help to reflect a lot of that heat back out into space and actually help to keep our forecasted temperatures slightly cooler. Now, yes, still well above the average of about 84 for this time of year, but we're talking about maybe the low to mid 90s. That's a potential as opposed to maybe the triple-digit heat we would have otherwise seen. So that might be the benefit to the wildfire smoke. All as our air quality does continue to suffer here across much of the eastern half and now parts of the west of Washington, of Oregon, until further notice. That is how far the National Weather Service has extended this. So the hazy skies, they're going to be staying with us. Although, again, by Wednesday into Thursday, Friday, I think we really should start to see some of those improvements. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Our weather alerts in regard to the red flag warnings, we have that through the southern Willamette Valley right now, and that's actually where the fire threat is going to subside later tonight because those winds are going to be slowing down. Right now we have a nice northerly breeze, and that can sometimes really allow for those winds to just freely fly through the Willamette Valley. And by the time they end up into Lynn, Benton, Lane County, Eugene, Springfield, that's where they really become gusty. So that's why our fire threat is elevated, along with the warm temperatures that are still here for us. Wind speeds could near about 40 miles per hour through the rest of this evening. However, I am anticipating some improvements really as we move our way through the rest of this evening. So that is the good news on that front. Now, our fire weather danger dials, Eugene, Springfield, no surprise there that they're slightly elevated back up to that, I'd say, moderate level, if not even high, definitely higher than what it has been as of late. As we move our way through the overnight hours, we always kind of see those improvements with cooling temperatures. The wind speeds die back just to see it ramp back up again to about a level 3, which is nothing to bat an eye by, especially for the west. These are some of the higher numbers that we have been already experiencing. As our current temperatures right now getting back up into the low 80s, 90 for Medford, low to mid 70s for the coastline. That's definitely warmer than what is typical for this time of year. And we are expected to hold on to those warmer than average temperatures working our way through the next several days. Now, it is a brand new month on top of that, and that means some brand new weather normals for us, or this is kind of the outline of what we expect to see over the next 4 weeks. It is typically our warmest month of the year, averaging about 82 degrees. Overnight lows 59, and our second driest month of the year, which does not bode well when we are in the thick of wildfire season now, expecting about a half inch of rain if we are lucky. likely to be below that, unfortunately, as the Climate Prediction Center really kind of paints much of the Pacific Northwest with hotter and drier conditions. All as this ridge of high pressure continues to build, that's going to be driving our higher heat over the next few days. But it's that low out over the Gulf of Alaska that sweeps in. It'll help to drop those temperatures back down to seasonal conditions as we move our way into, say, Thursday, Friday. But the wildfire smoke, you can see, definitely choking out our skies over the next several days. So the hazy conditions we are currently dealing with likely going to be staying with us as we move our way through the rest of not only today, but tomorrow and even into Wednesday. As you see some of those lighter shaded colors, that is where we are expected to see some of those improvements, especially along the I-84 location, but still likely holding onto the wildfire smoke across our area. All right, tonight, the hazy conditions, they stay. A KOIN 6 weather alert still in place. All as those temperatures fall just below the 60-degree mark. That's going to be another kind of key player in those heat advisories, as very little relief from the heat is expected during the overnight time frame. All as our afternoon highs, well, they're expected to climb back up, into the mid to upper 90s. The high summer heat once again returning to the Pacific Northwest. Triple digits possible for the Roseburg, the Medford area, all a potential as those KOIN 6 weather alerts are in place Tuesday and Wednesday. Temperatures approaching 100 degrees. I would not be surprised if much of the Portland-Vancouver metro area actually hits the 100-degree mark. The century mark for this would be the second time so far this summer season. Thankfully, the air quality starts to improve late in the week. Of course, we're going to be keeping a close eye on that because it doesn't take much for those wind directions to really change and play into our forecast. All as we settle our way back into seasonal temperatures by the weekend with sunny, dry conditions. Again, the building of the lack of rainfall is going to be elevating our wildfire threat. So all something to keep in mind as we move our way through the next several days. As wildfire season is definitely peaking here across the Pacific Northwest, and a KOIN 6 weather alert stays in place through Wednesday. Now's a quick look at your forecast. Of course, we will have more details coming up on KOIN 6 News, CBS Channel 6, starting at 4 through 6:30. And again tonight on Portland CW at 10 and back on CBS, and always streaming right here on KOIN Plus. Have a great rest of your afternoon.